I don't know about you, but throughout my career, even I remember in my first roles, I used to write down notes about when I see people doing things in the wrong manner, like my boss or the CEO. I used to take down notes like things not to do when I'm in charge, things not to do when I'm a manager. And some of them are very obvious, like never have a "you're fired" joke, because it's never funny to anyone except of that manager. I did come up with a bunch of things that I see repeatedly with companies, and I thought, hey, it might be actually easier to spin this around as how to ruin an engineering organization and help you notice whether you're at fault in some of these or maybe you can improve, and make you notice when you're doing things that are very common yet always suck and you should not be doing, okay? And that's the topic of this week's video. If you're new here, I'm Ben-Yosef. I've been helping tech executives create amazing engineering organizations for the past few years, and this is part of it. Knowing how they're ruining their organizations and hopefully helping them stop doing that. And with that, let's start with something very basic: gatekeeping. Something that definitely gives a bunch of companies a leg up is when they're starting with a solid foundation. A bunch of people who have worked together in a previous company, who have worked together in a startup that was successful or not. Because that means that when they start working together, they already know how others work. The team is already gelled or partly. And when you start with that core, you can get running really fast. That's great. However, I've seen companies tend to rely too much on this initial core and essentially create with time a caste system. There's this gatekeeping that makes it very hard for anyone not from within this inner circle to rise up the ranks of the company. So I saw companies even at unicorn status where it was very hard to get some leadership role if you weren't an alumni of the same school or of the same big corp company that the founders came from. And that's wrong. We see it a lot here when you have, people from their own cliques within a specific unit in the army and that sort of stuff. And I think that those tend to create a company that is not as diverse as it could be and really slow down how fast you can grow leadership and stellar potential. Because, believe it or not all the bright people attended Harvard or whatever. We come from a bunch of different backgrounds, and actually having that diversity can really help create a team that's much better, more robust, more innovative. And this gatekeeping, again, while it was easier maybe to get started, should be ended as soon as possible. Once you start bringing in other people, the tendencies of looking at, that sort of background is better, that has to stop immediately. Next, we have rapid replacements. You're new in your role. Maybe you had a reorg, maybe you just got promoted, maybe you just joined a company as the VP of engineering, whatever it is, and you right off the bat start bringing in new people. When you do that, it looks to others, even if you don't have that intention, as if you're trying to replace them, like a virus, a parasite trying to replace the host. Once you're in, you start replacing everyone. And that sends warning signals to everyone around, because they're like, he just said he's so excited to work with us, but he seems to just be bringing his old gang together. So is he excited to work with us, or is he excited to work replacing us? Don't do that. It's okay to start hiring some people you trust, but be very clear, and also don't just hire a bunch of people you know. I know that for some founders, this is a huge plus. Having a new executive that can bring in people from past companies is a sort of trust sign, right? People are prepared to follow that person, therefore they ought to be good at what they're doing. And yes, there's some truth to that. But you have to know your limits. You cannot do this too fast and replace too many people, or place only people you know in those positions, because you'll be creating that cast, and also you'll be slowing down through everyone else in the company, so even the good people you haven't even gotten to know yet will leave. Not a good way to start your new role. Then we've got eroding trust. You see examples all over the place, like companies that have a layoff round, a week after they promised everyone things were going fine. Or companies that said, we're only going to have this layoff round and that's it. We've crunched the numbers, that should be fine, only to have another one a month later. Or when you have reorgs without explaining why. Or when the company realizes that something was held secret for too long, especially if you're rude enough to have one of your company values be transparency or be honesty. All of those things that just show the great dissonance between what you preach and what you do. I think that we have to realize that people's trust is one of the most important things we have, and not allow ourselves to just erode it so quickly because we're afraid of saying the truth. Not only people will realize it at some point, but also they will second guess everything you tell them from this point on until you earn their trust back, which might be never. And therefore, when you tackle something hard, ensure that you're not just thinking about the next 5 seconds or the next 5 hours of having the bad feeling of conveying bad news and handling people being stressed due to that. Think about the next 5 months after this, about how people will react when they will remember, yes, at least they treated us like adults. At least they had the decency of telling us what was really happening. And this is, I think, critical if you want to go through bad times in a way that ensures this will be a growth point. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, as opposed to being, the thing that was the beginning of the end. For example, if you have layoffs, would you trust someone who communicated properly and really tried to help people who were getting laid off? Or when you have to lay off someone who is underperforming or not doing the specific role that you hired them for as good as you thought, if you start bad-mouthing them the second they're out the door, because people start thinking, will they be saying the same about me when I decide to leave eventually? So trust is critical. It's more important than most things leaders have in the relationship with their employees, and therefore if you want to ruin your organization, be sure to waste that trust quickly, and you're going to see results real fast. Then we've got preferential leadership. And that's when you tend to focus on specific areas. Now, there's no leader that's good and enjoys all parts of the work evenly, right? That's probably not possible. And therefore, there will be areas where you'll find it easier or more engaging to take part with. I'm hoping you can't hear the thunder too much. So, yeah, that's fine. However, you need to be aware of these tendencies and preferences and ensure that you're leveling these correctly. Your organization will suffer if you allow these preferences to translate into letting some parts of the organization be neglected. So if you really don't like front end and you're only giving the back end processes and projects attention, your front end will suffer. The best people there will suffer, and they will start thinking that what they're doing is not being taken into consideration properly, is not being valued properly, even though it just might be that you naturally find it easier to talk with the back-end people. I don't know. Don't do that. When you're allowing yourself to focus only on crunch modes, when there is a blitz, when there's an outage, and that's when you shine. But when people do the day-to-day grinds of ensuring that, things are okay and we don't get to the outages, what you're telling people is that you really prefer the hero mode of working and not being professional enough to avoid those situations. You need to strike the right balance here, and the balance you want to convey for others. This means that you don't neglect others and you become a proper role model for what is important for the company and how we spend our time into areas depending on how important they are, our priorities. Then we've got Managing by inputs. When you're looking at people and you're thinking, oh, I see that person leaving the office early, or everyone is working late. That person isn't. That person is not answering my Slacks in the evenings. When I'm seeing this, I know that whoever's managing me doesn't really understand what I'm doing, doesn't trust me enough to do what I ought to be doing. This is like, working in a supermarket and expecting people to put in their 9 to 5, not understanding knowledge work and how it works. Because I can sit here for 8 hours, 10 hours a day and do nothing, and I can perform amazing work within 3 hours and just need 3 hours to process it first. So within 6 hours, I'll be so much more productive than someone else. This is not about input management. You want to manage people's outcomes, what they reach, what they achieve, and you can do that by helping them realize what's important, what you're expecting. If someone gets things done, all the tasks in the sprint, even if they had to go out early because one of their kids was sick, I don't care. I'm fine with that. If you think that someone constantly has more capacity to do things within what you'd expect, and maybe they're buffering things too much, intentionally or not, talk to them about it. But that doesn't mean you need to be managing their inputs. Ensure that your people are working smarter, not harder. If you tell them that what you care about is hours in the office, they're going to sit in the office. I've done that. I've been part of teams where we sat in the office for 14 hours a day, and when we moved to the regular work hours of same people, we were more productive, not less. So stop it with the input management. Then we have how you treat bad behavior. When you see someone who's acting in a way that's mean, that's unethical, that doesn't jive with your culture, with your code of conduct, you have to put a stop to it. They get the feedback, and others in the company are aware that you handle it, either because that person apologizes, either because you have a talk about it in an all hands. You can't allow people to misbehave, and even if you talk to that person one-on-one, then have others think you didn't do anything, because then the message that you're sending, the signal for everyone is, we condone this. We let this roam free, and you're quickly going to see things deteriorate very quickly. I saw this repeatedly in a bunch of companies where no one, especially people from a tech background, wanted to feel like they're in the handling all of those little things of someone maybe raising their voice, etc. But you have to. There's no way around it. You have to do it if you want to create a culture worth leading. Otherwise, you're going to ruin your tech org. Then we have lack of coaching. I'm not going to get too much into it, but if you're not coaching people and letting them be stuck where they are, the good people might be okay, but in general, you're not going to see people fulfill their potential as well as they could have otherwise. So don't do that. Install a healthy coaching framework. And you know what? I just released a free 20-something ebook about my coaching framework that's field tested with a bunch of suggestions and a schedule for you to try it out. And it's all free. You just need to check the link in the description and get it. What are you going to lose? And this is something that I've seen work for small startups and unicorns and everything in between. So give it a try, and the only thing I'm asking in return, when you see it working, when you have success stories, send me an email, okay? Then we have creating feature factories. When you're telling your people, you're prescriptive, you're telling them exactly what to do, you don't give them any sort of agency, any autonomy. They each are working by their own, getting exactly the bite of the feature that they need to develop. So someone doing the iOS part, someone doing the backend part, they just have the API. And you don't have a team where you have collaboration, where you have creativity, where you have people really understanding the bigger picture. They're just churning out features and thinking that's what matters. Feature factories cap the impact and creativity that you can get from your team. What you want to do is create empowered teams where people actually can come up with their own solutions, where teams self-manage. So you have the feature and you let the team break it up and decide how to do it. You don't be so prescriptive like a kindergarten teacher that tells everyone exactly where they can play right now. Stop it, because you're going to create a team that's acting like a kindergarten. And lastly, impact disconnect. When people are not connected to the impact of what they're doing, they will be delivering work, delivering software into the void. They will never see the results of what they're doing. They will never realize if it's helping clients, if it's making things better, if they're hitting that KPI they want to improve, whatever. And when that happens, people just tend to focus more on the tech parts. So they will obsess over clean code, over how they're writing it, over using a new framework, as opposed to delivering value to clients. Because when I can't see the value I'm providing, I will find something else to give me meaning, to give me direction, to give me motivation. So you have to connect people tightly to the impact of what they're doing so they can see what's happening. So share results, have product do overviews from time to time. Have a new article out, you can check it out, about impact retrospectives, how we make people connect to what they've done and see the results in the field. And when you do that, hopefully all of these together will ensure you stop ruining your tech teams. And if you liked all of these, I'm thinking you like my playlist of the new videos I've released recently, which should be somewhere here on screen. And I'm wishing you an amazing 2025 without ruining your tech team. Ciao.